What we're going to talk about today is we're going to do a lot of reviewing. We're going to do a lot of history. We're going to do it real quick. We're going to go through almost all of Genesis, and we're going to talk about the covenant. And the reason why we're going to talk about that is because today's parashah is entitled Rulings. We're going to look at what these rulings mean and why they were given to us and what is the purpose for them. Now, in the covenant, we have to understand what a covenant is. A covenant is a solemn agreement. That is an agreement between two or more people. Now, a contract is also the same thing. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at man's laws. We're going to look at God's laws. And we're going to see how they come together. In His wisdom, how He used the law to help us live together. And then we're going to look at what man has done to the laws. We're going to see how those laws and justice has been perverted by man. Now, a few things that we want to do first before we get started is we want to go over some basic definitions. In rulings, the definition of ruling is the act of governing. It's to exercise authority, to rule over, to direct and control, to manage and administer, to influence conduct, and to hold in check and restrain or regulate. Now, one of the things we're going to learn about today is how, in following the Torah, the people were told that they would prosper. Now, we have to understand what prosperity means. Prosperity means to flourish and to succeed, to thrive and grow in a vigorous way. Now, a covenant being a solemn agreement, we have to understand what an agreement is. An agreement is an understanding. It's an arrangement between two or more people. It's a partnership. It can be a contract. Now, a contract is an agreement between two or more people. It's to do something. It can be formal. It can be set forth in writing, and it can be enforceable by law. Or it could be informal. It could be verbal, like an assignment of duties. Now, a covenant is usually contained in a document, and for our purposes, the covenant is contained in the Torah. That's our document. Now, when you talk about a partnership, which is what we are entered into with Yahweh, a partnership is a relationship. It is a joint interest between two or more, formally established by a contract, which for our purposes will be the covenant and the Torah. Now, in order for a contract to be valid, it has to be mutually beneficial to all parties. It's usually agreed to by an act of good faith. And we're going to see many acts of good faith today as we review through what happened to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as they established this relationship which continues today with us, with Yahweh. Now, in an agreement, there can be some quid pro quo. That's Latin, and it means something for something. Now, another way of looking at it too would be, you might have heard the word pro bono. And that's without compensation. That's when somebody does something without being paid for it or without being given anything. Now, in a contract, the more details, the easier it is to do several different things. The easier it is to describe the duties of each partner or participant. Many things that we're going to read today in the rulings sound like they don't make sense. but they do when you look at what their purpose is for, which we're going to discover. And they do make sense when you look at the detail that they involve, the big picture. So the details of a contract describe the duties that each participant is supposed to do. And they also enforce each participant to complete their duty. If you don't perform as described in the contract or covenant, there will be a penalty to pay. We've seen this over and over again. We're going to talk more about it. Plus, you also, in a contract that's detailed, you can realize the objectives that are set forth in it. What are you trying to accomplish? In the case of the Torah, we're trying to accomplish preparing people for a marriage in a heavenly kingdom to our Father. These rulings and these laws that we're reading about are designed to prepare us spiritually by the way we conduct ourselves in the world that we're living in today. Now, also, details in a contract will allow for the complete satisfaction of each participant. If everybody does what they're supposed to do, in the end, everybody's going to walk away happy and everything's going to be accomplished. And that's what we're trying to do with Torah. We're trying to accomplish this building of ourselves spiritually by the way we conduct ourselves in the world today. So today we're going to review what was agreed to in the covenant and what the expectations are for all of us. We're also going to see how it's enforced and how it's tested through acts of good faith. There are many acts of good faith that have taken place so far in our reading, and we're going to talk about those and see what they meant and how they're used. Also, we're going to see how we obtain the goals set forth in the covenant. What are our responsibilities? What do we have to do? And what the outcome of this should look like. So now we're going to read this week's reading, the parashah, and what I'm going to have is I'm going to have volunteers read specific parts of it, and then I'm going to give you some concise commentary on what that particular means. I'm going to kind of speak it to you in layman's terms about what the rulings mean that we're going to be reading. Then when we get finished, we're going to review and see how all of this is applicable to us. And step by step, we'll see how our partnership with Yahweh has been developed. So like I said, it's a big review today, but what we're going to see is we're going to understand a little bit more about business. We're going to understand more about contract and how they're enforced and how they're agreed to. Then finally, I'm going to give you a visual aid to demonstrate what we've learned today. Yeah. So let's start off, and what I'd like to have is I'd like to have one person begin, a volunteer, and I'd like you to read in Exodus 21. I'd like you to read verse 1 through 11. Anybody who wants to.
Exodus 21?
Mm-hmm.
Now these are the ordinances which you are to set before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years, but on the 7th he shall go out a free man without payment. If he comes alone, he shall go out alone. If he is the husband of a wife, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, and will not go out a free man, then his master shall bring him to God. Then he shall bring him to the door and the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him permanently. If a man sells his daughter as a female slave...
Okay, hold on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master, who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He does not have authority to sell her for a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. If he will not do these three things for her, then she shall go out for nothing without payment of money.
Okay, so these are about moral law and justice. I want you to think of the servant here as a picture of one bonded to sin, being made free as an emblem of liberty through Yeshua. Free without money or price. This is especially important to the Hebrews after escaping from bondage from Egypt. And to see how important this was to Yahweh, I want you to turn to Jeremiah 34, and we're going to start reading from verse 8. This word came to Jeremiah from Adonai after King Zedekiah had made a covenant with the people of Jerusalem to emancipate them. Everyone who had a male or female slave who was Hebrew was to let him go. None was to keep as his slave a fellow Jew. All the leaders and all the people who had entered into the covenant wherein everyone was to free his male and female slaves and not keep them in bondage any longer. They listened and they let them go. But afterwards they changed their minds. They made the male and female slaves whom they had freed return, and they brought them back into subjugation as slaves. Therefore this word of Adonai came to Jeremiah from Adonai. Here is what Adonai, the God of Israel, says. When I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, where they lived as slaves, I made this covenant with them. At the end of 7 years, every one of you is to set free his brother Hebrew, who has been sold to you and has served you 6 years. You are to let him go free from you. But your ancestors did not listen to me or pay any attention. Now you repented. You did what was right from my viewpoint, when each of you proclaimed freedom to his fellow, and you made a covenant before me in the house bearing my name. But then you changed your minds. You profaned my name when each of you took back his male and female slaves, whom you had set free to live as they wished, and brought them back into subjection as your slaves. Therefore, here is what Adonai says. You did not heed me and proclaim freedom, each to his brother and each to his neighbor. And now I proclaim for you a freedom, says Adonai. For sword, plague, and famine, I will make you an object of horror to all the kingdoms on earth. As for the men who violated my covenant by not living up to the conditions of the covenant which they made in my presence, when they cut the calf in two and passed between its parts, the leader of Judah, the leaders of Jerusalem, the officials, the Kohanim, and all the people of the land who passed between the parts of the calf, I will hand them over to their enemies, hand them over to those who seek their lives, and their corpses will become food for birds in the air and wild animals. Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his officials I will hand over to their enemies, to those who seek their lives, and to the army of the king of Babel, which has withdrawn. So he takes the freedom of Hebrews and their subjugation as slaves very seriously. So now, if we continue reading, we're going to need a volunteer to read verses 12 through 21, please.
He who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint you a place to which he may flee. If, however, a man acts presumptuously toward his neighbor, so as to kill him craftily, you are to take him even from my altar, that he may die. He who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He who kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or he is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death. He who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. If men have a quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die but remains in bed, if he gets up and walks around outside on his staff, then he who struck him shall go unpunished. He shall only pay for his loss of time, and shall take care of him until he is completely healed. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod, and he dies at his hand, he shall be punished. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his property.
Okay, so God protects the life he gives, but he provides refuge for protection to those without fault. Disobedient children should beware. Repent if you ever lift your hand against your mother or father. And parents, you are to be careful not to provoke your children, and you are to train them well. Through poverty, the people sometimes sold themselves or their children, and judges often sold people for their crimes. Creditors sold their debtors. Man-stealing is a terrible crime. Compensation must be made for hurt done to a person without death. So now someone needs to read 22 through 36.
If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall be surely punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And if a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth, or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. If an ox gore a man or a woman, that they die, then the ox shall be surely stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. But if the ox were wont to push with his horns in time past, and it hath been testified to his owner, and he has not kept him in, but that he has killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and the owner shall also be put to death. If there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him. Whether he has gored a son, or has gored a daughter, according to the judgment shall it be done unto him. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. If a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit, and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein, then the owner of the pit shall make it good, and give money unto the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. And if one man's ox hurt another's, then he died, then they shall sell the live ox, and divide the money of it. And the dead ox also they shall divide. Or if it be known that the ox has used to push in time past, and his owner hath not kept him in, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead shall be his own.
So, you got to wonder yourself, what does that have to do with today?
Well, David Jessica fell in the well.
Sure.
Because it wasn't covered up.
That's right. Jay?
One of the things that I really stood out very much in this Torah portion is so much of this is where the person is put to death. There's very, very few things now in this society that we actually look at the death penalty. But yet, on this, they set their standards extremely high. They told you, if you do this, you will be put to death. They didn't say you're gonna get grounded. They're not gonna say they're gonna take your Xbox away from you. They say you're gonna die. And one of the things that this, I think, had a lot to do with is they did not want where people would compromise, well, it's all right that I do it on this time. There was no compromise. It was that the standard was high. And this is what they wanted for their people and their morality and their way of living on that. So instead of having something that, well, he can get away with it, well, he'll get somebody else to get away with it, and somebody else to get away with it, and it just keeps just kind of where we are today.
Sure.
On that.
What do you get when he does something and gets away with it? He does something and gets away with it. She does something and gets away with it. What do you get?
No standard.
You get no justice.
No standard.
You
There's
get
no
tolerance.
justice.
You get tolerance.
There's no justice too. And these are rules of justice that are still pertinent today. Now, you talk about an ox goring somebody and knowing that your ox has a habit of goring somebody. How do you feel when you read in the paper that somebody's pit bull has killed someone's child? How do you feel about that?
Knowing that the dog is attacked.
How do you feel when you hear about it happening a second time?
Anger.
So this person is saying, my dog is more important to me than another human being's life. I love this dog more than... It's not just... So that's what these rules are about. Not just about your dog killing somebody or your ox killing somebody. It's about if you do something that indirectly causes harm to someone else, you need to make that right. If we do wrong, we make restitution. And that's what makes it more just. That's what makes a just world. So now, we need to go into Exodus 22, and I need somebody to read verse 1 through 31, please.
If a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep's son. If the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. If the sun is risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He should make full restitution if he has nothing. Then he should make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he will be sold for his theft. If the thief is certainly found alive in his hand, whether it's an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall restore double. If a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed, and lets loose his animal, and it feeds another man's field, he shall make restitution from the beast, from the best of his own field, from the best of his own vineyard. If fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that stacked grain, standing grain, or a field is consumed, he who kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. If a man delivers to his neighbor money or articles to keep, and it is stolen out of the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought unto the judges to see whether he has put in his hand into the neighbor's goods. For any kind of trespass, whether it concerns an ox or a donkey or a sheep or clothing, or for any kind of lost thing which is another claims to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whomever the judges condemn shall pay double for his neighbor. If a man delivers to his neighbor a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or an animal to keep, and dies, it is hurt or driven away, no one seeing it, then an oath of Yahweh shall be taken between the two of them, that he has not put under his hand into his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that, and he shall not make it good. But if in fact it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to the owner of it. If it is torn into pieces by a beast, then he shall bring the evidence, and he shall not make good what was torn. If a man borrows anything from his neighbor, and it becomes injured or dies, the owner of it not being with it, he shall surely make it good. If the owner was with it, he shall not make it good. If it was hired, it came with its hire. If a man entices a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall surely pay the bride price for her to be his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money according to the bride price of virgins. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who sacrifices to any god except Yahweh only, he shall be utterly destroyed. You shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Set to 21.
31.
You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict them in any way, and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry. My wrath will become hot, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like a moneylender to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's garment as a pledge, you shall return to him before the sun goes down. For that is the only thing covering for him, and his garment for his skin. What will he sleep in? And it will be that when he cries out to me, I will hear, for I am gracious. And you shall not revile God, nor cause a ruler of your people, nor curse a ruler of your people. You shall not delay to offer the first of your ripe produce and your juices. Your firstborn and your sons you shall give to me. Likewise, you shall do with your oxen and your sheep, and it shall be with its mother for 7 days, and on the 8th day you shall give it to me. And you shall be holy men to me. You shall not eat meat torn by beasts in the field, and you shall throw it to the dogs.
Okay, so how many of you have ever loaned something to someone and then had it come back broken? How'd that make you feel? How about you loan something to someone and you never get it back? How'd that make you feel? So, you know, these show the spirit of kindness and mercy. And, you know, we answer to God for what we do in malice and what we do in haste. And this idea of restitution is about justice. You know, we should also do this restitution without being compelled to by the law. We shouldn't have to have a third party come in and take over the negotiation for us. These are things that we should do on our own. Now, further on it talks about living soberly and righteously and how to live godly lives in this world, denying our lusts. It talks about how the Lord is our portion. We're to be His people. And He's to satisfy our soul's desires. We're not supposed to get it through worldly pursuits. So now let's go and read Exodus 23, and I need someone to read verse 1 through 9.
You must not spread a false report. Do not join the wicked to be a malicious witness. You must not follow a crowd in wrongdoing. Do not testify in a lawsuit and go along with a crowd to pervert justice. Do not show favoritism to a poor person in his lawsuit. After you come across your enemy's stray ox or donkey, you must return it to him. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you lying helpless under its load, and you want to refrain from helping it, you must help with it. You must not deny justice to the poor among you in his lawsuit. Stay far away from a false accusation. Do not kill the innocent and the just, because I will not justify the guilty. You must not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and corrupts the words of the righteous. You must not oppress a foreign resident.